your life, can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bunny. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am your lovely host, Dr. Jefferson, and we are going to be talking about mental health matters in the legal construct today. Okay, so a viewer sent me a video about an old article from 2008. And in this article, it was about the death of a person who was riding on a Greyhound bus. And he was attacked by another person and subsequently lost his life. And his plea in court was one of insanity because his plea was not that it didn't happen. It was not that he didn't kill the guy. It was the fact that he didn't have criminal intent because he was not there 100% for the event. Hey, Trey, what's going on? How are you? So the question that the viewer sent me was basically, is mental health such such an impactful event that it can actually cause a person to do things that are not a part of their personality? And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how people sometimes commit crimes and sometimes they're not responsible for them simply because your brain does some things that take you out of the process. So if you guys have any questions that you want to add as I am reading this off to you and this content and giving you guys the background and everything, feel free to do so. Hey, what's going on? But it is pretty intense. And before I get started, I want to say that I do not own rights to the music that you may hear playing in the background. And of course, my biggest one is that I am using the content that you will hear today based on internet fair use. So let's talk about this. 22-year-old Canadian guy was stabbed, beheaded, and cannibalized while riding the Greyhound Canada bus along the Canadian highway. These Canadian things. This happened on July 30th, 2008. His name was Tim McLean, and I think that it's a very gruesome story. Before I even really get into this, I have to remind you guys that viewer discretion is definitely advised. If you are around children or if a child is viewing this content, please log off now or go somewhere with some headphones in so that the kids cannot hear this discussion because it's definitely not appropriate. I want to make sure I put that caution out there. Okay. So, as you guys are hearing this, feel free to like, share the content and put your information in the, put your insights in the comment section. I'll get to them after I'm done reading this off. So on March 5th, 2009, I told you guys the murder happened July 30th, 2008. So if this is not a speedy trial, I don't know what is. On March 5th, 2009, McLean's killer, which is a 40-year-old Chinese Canadian named Vince Lee, was found not criminally responsible for the murder. Okay, and that's not guilty by way of insanity for those of you who live here in the United States. So, and he was remanded to a high security mental health facility in Manitoba, where he was detained until he was released. And yes, you are hearing correctly. He was released on July 30th, 2008. Now, a couple of things with this. The weapons that he used in the murder of this guy were a knife in which a passenger saw was inside of a sheath when he walked past them. Nobody said anything. Nobody was alarmed to this. And again, I say this is in Canada. Okay. He also had scissors. During this time, the bus was full, and I will not show the video. I will not show the video, and I will not show the pictures because the man was decapitated, for one, and out of respect for the family. It's very important that I do this the most sensitive way possible. And a lot of people were affected by this. And I'm going to talk about that too. I'm going to speak to that too, because in his request for me to review this content and to make this public and to talk about this as an issue that also Canadian people struggle with. And it's not just a thing that happens inside of the United States, because this is one of the things he wanted me to talk about. But it's a lot. It's a lot. Okay. So, great. And hey, Lisa, how are you? Make sure that if your grandson comes inside, that you move to a place where you cannot be heard, or I cannot be heard by your grandson, or you use headphones. Okay. So let me get back into this. We're going to go ahead and go into the incident in and of itself. On July 30th, 2008, Tim McLean, a carnival barker, was returning home to Winnipeg after working at a fair in Edmonton. He departed Edmonton on board a Greyhound bus, okay, to Winnipeg via the Yellowhead Highway through Saskatchewan. He sat at the rear, one row ahead of the toilet. And I mentioned to you guys that someone saw the weapon in a sheath on the side of the man on the bus. It was on its way to the restroom. Okay. So the victim sitting a row ahead of the toilet. At 6:55 p.m., the bus departed from a stop in Erickson, Manitoba, with a new passenger, Vince Lee. Okay. His name, I can't pronounce it. Wei Wang. Described as a tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and sunglasses. He originally sat near the front of the bus, but moved to sit next to McLean following a scheduled rest stop. McLean barely acknowledged Lee, then fell asleep against the window pane, headphones covering his ear. Okay, this is one of the main reasons that I'm telling you guys, and I'm always asking folks that walk around with headphones on, like, how can you be truly aware of your surroundings? But you guys don't understand what happened to this guy. So let's get back into this. According to witnesses, McLean was sleeping with his headphones on when the man sitting next to him suddenly produced a large knife and began stabbing him in the neck and chest. After the attack began, the bus driver pulled to the side of the road, and he and all of the passengers fled the vehicle. So my question right now, as I'm stopping in the middle of this, is what would you have done at the point where this man starts to stab another man? Just all of a sudden. What would you do? He got on the bus, sat next to him, started stabbing him. What are you doing on the bus? Where you sitting? What's going on? Okay. The driver and two other men made an attempt to rescue McLean, but were chased away by Lee, who slashed at them from behind the locked bus door. Locked bus door. Lee ultimately decapitated McLean and displayed his severed head to those standing outside the bus. Then returned to McLean's body and began severing other parts and consuming some of McLean's flesh with a knife and a pair of scissors. Okay. I want you guys to pay special attention to the time that I am mentioning over the course of me reading these details. At 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. Okay. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police received a report of a stabbing on a Greyhound bus west of the city. They arrived to find the suspect still on the bus, being prevented from escaping by another passenger. The bus driver and a truck driver, who had provided a crowbar and a hammer as weapons. The other passengers were huddled on the side of the road. Some of them were crying and vomiting, as the suspect had earlier attempted to escape the bus by driving away. Now, let me go ahead and talk about this before I read this part. I want you guys to know that there is something in the report that was given to the police by those people that were on the bus. One of the men, I think I mentioned him already, the other passenger. So the truck driver, at some point, he talked to the bus driver and he mentioned the importance of, once they were off trying to get in, right, helping Tim McLean, right, or something like that. He mentioned that the bus has an immobilizer system and that they should activate that just in case before the police arrived, because obviously the police were taking a pretty long time getting there. There was a way to prevent him from driving off with the person that he was murdering in the bus. Okay. So the driver had engaged the emergency immobilizer system, and this is after the guy had told him to do that, rendering the vehicle inoperable. Witnesses had observed the suspect stabbing and cutting McLean's body with a knife and carrying McLean's severed head around. By 9 p.m., police, I told you guys they arrived at 8:30, okay? By 9 p.m., police were in a standoff with the suspect and had summoned special negotiators and a heavily armed tactical unit. So, how were they sometimes the language of these reports, it's the language. So he had a knife and scissors. How were they in a standoff? What is a standoff? Anybody? Yeah. Okay. Heavily armed tactical units now there and special negotiator. The suspect alternatively paced the length of the bus and defiled the corpse. By that, what we mean is he started to eat the person. And he was going back and forth with the head. Police officers then observed Lee, of course, eating the rest of the parts of the body. Meanwhile, the stranded passengers were transported from the scene to be interviewed by the police, right? So the officers talked about in their reporting to the news that they heard Lee say a couple of times, "I have to stay on this bus forever." Now, he attempted at 1:30 a.m. Are you guys keeping track of the time? To break out of the bus by breaking through a window. And so he was soon arrested after that. He was shot once with a taser and then again with the taser, then handcuffed and placed in the back of the police cruiser. Parts of the victim's body placed in a plastic bag as he was discarding the components. You're eating wings, you put the bones in a bag. And parts of his heart were never recovered. Okay, and the parts that were missing, of course, are presumed to have been eaten by Lee. So at 10 a.m., Greyhound representatives took the other passengers to a local store to replace their clothes the next morning. They're going to buy them clothes because they had blood on their clothes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So they arrived in Winnipeg at 3:30 p.m. that day to be reunited with their family members and friends. From 10 to 3:30, they were missing in action. So before we talk about some background information about the perpetrator, Vince Lee, I want to kind of see what you guys are saying. Okay. Let's see what we got. Hey, Kel, how are you guys? And if you are in the chat, do share this. Do share this. Okay, awesome. Okay, standoffs usually involve hostages, and are you saying who are an immediate threat to other people? Yeah, they needed clothes, but they needed more than clothes. So we're gonna talk about the whole thing. We're really gonna dive into this. So the question that this guy was asking me when he sent me this content was, is mental health such a big thing that people can really get off with killing someone, right? Totally got off with killing someone. Now, before I talk about this, I want you guys to understand something. At no point is it okay for you to go out and murder someone and then claim insanity. Thanks, Lisa. You're amazing. So, and I'm not encouraging that. I just want to make sure that I put the education and insight out there. And I want you guys to have a better understanding of what psychosis is, how it presents, and things that, that are around this case that are clear, very, very clear, right? And this guy's interactions with the police, with the other people on the bus. Woo! It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, okay? So let's do this. So Vincent, that's Vince, by the way, was born in Dangong, China, right? He was born on April 30th, 1968. In 1992, he graduated from Wuhan Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in computing. From 94 to 98, he worked in Beijing as a computer software engineer. Lee immigrated to China on the 11th of June, 2001. Looky, he just had a birthday. So, the birth to Canada for him is probably a huge thing right now. So, let's talk about this. That's probably why this guy sent this to me, right? So, he became a Canadian citizen the end of 2006 officially, right? At no point during this time was he having any issues with his behaviors with other people, right? So he had jobs, he had a wife, they say for 6 months or so, and the last that the wife heard of him before this event kind of transpired was he left a note when he was getting ready to go and get on the bus. He left a note basically saying he was a failure in the marriage, but he was hoping, that she felt secure in the marriage, hoping that she was happy with him, but he's, feeling really bad about the job that he's done as a husband. So before he got into this space where he killed this man on this day, he was fired. So I want to talk about precipitating events. A person could have a seemingly normal life and they could be living life and enjoying life and contributing in a positive way. They could be an upstanding citizen and they could be an integral component and a part of their community, okay? And then all of a sudden something happens that kind of takes them off of balance. That's when we have a risk of psychosis. And the symptoms that are seen in this guy, based off of the things that he said from his mouth, even though they had him seen by a psychologist, these are psychotic features. Okay, so whenever you hear from nowhere, out of nowhere, out of the blue, you hear voices. It's not your voice. You're not talking to yourself. Somebody else is talking to you. And you know it's somebody else talking to you, but there's no one else there. The radio is off. The television is off. The televisions and the radios in the distance are off. Computers, cell phones are off. So the sound's not coming from there. It's coming from within you. And this is a real thing. It definitely happens, okay? What I want you to do is call the National Suicide Line, like immediately. Don't wait for it to manifest. Don't even try and figure out what the message really is. Just do that, you know? And that's, you know, it'll pick up anywhere, even if you're in Canada, okay? So that's 800-273-8255, National Suicide Line. Somebody's always there 100% of the time, okay? This man lost his life, and he didn't have to lose his life on this particular day. It's a couple of things that stand out for me, and I don't want to make it look like victim shaming, but let me tell you something. Please, people, please, please, please be aware of your surroundings at all times. You never know when someone's going to have a psychotic episode, because that's why they're called brief psychotic episodes in the DSM. I included links so that you guys can check out this story in its full capacity as it's been reported by several different news outlets around the world and things like that. And I also included a link for a reference to the DSM, because that's how we as practitioners in the field of psychology understand and conceptualize what's going on with people when they are having issues that, you know, kind of offset their behavioral, emotional, and cognitive processes, right? The way that they operate. So this man, when he was interviewed by police, hey, official urban therapist, how are you? You could totally get in here. This is like a lesson for you if, you know, yeah. Now you get to see what we really have to deal with every day in this life, the more serious issues. So here's the thing. People will sometimes hear and see things that are not there. And what causes us to experience these chemical imbalances are the basic chemicals of dopamine, norepinephrine, whatever. These are hormones that are meant to keep us feeling balanced, feeling good, right? Oxytocin, serotonin levels have to be at their optimal speed, right? But when things happen in our life, because we're systemically connected, that's how we function. We're people that are collective parts of systems. When things happen to us, sometimes we are overwhelmed in the moment and we can't stay in the moment. So we get so far ahead to thinking about how is this going to affect me that we lose our ground completely. And that's never good. That is never ever good, people. It really isn't. Let me say this. People had to stand outside of a bus and watch a fellow citizen be consumed by another person. They had to. Nobody got them help. These people had to go after the fact and file lawsuits, and they lost. A woman that was on that bus that day was a pregnant woman. And after she had her child, she suffered from symptoms of PTSD, where she was now reliving the event, where she would have nightmares of this man chopping this guy up, eating different parts of him, pacing back and forth on this bus with this man's severed head in his hand, and eating his heart out, literally. Nobody got them help. Nobody got them any help. This woman lost custody of her daughter. Yeah, I think it was the daughter. Whatever her child was, she lost custody as a result of her having those many recurring nightmares and PTSD experiences, because she couldn't be very much present for her parenting experience because she was affected so negatively by this event. Okay, so that's that part. What I wanna convey is that psychosis looks like you're hearing things, seeing things, and your live experience is something that other people are not aware of, and they don't have any perspective of whatsoever. So that means that they don't see or hear anything, but you're hearing a particular thing, right? And you're seeing a particular thing. You know, I said the same thing. Definitely a really good plot for a horror movie, but and these people lived out a horror movie. It was terrible. And nobody got them help. After you witness things like this, it can set you into places where you're now at risk of a psychotic break, okay? What the biggest thing is this person who sent me this and his very, very long-winded email, he was upset at the fact that the system obviously clearly failed the community in which they are supposed to be assigned to protect and provide for. Greyhound failed them. I don't know who's responsible for getting help for them, but somebody is, somebody's responsible for that. This guy said that when he was interviewed by police, to go back to that, he said that he was doing fine. And, all of a sudden, after he got fired, he started hearing all sorts of things. He was like, and he thought to himself that this must be God, because before he moved to Canada, he heard a voice tell him that he needed to move to Canada. And so he did. He felt like it was God talking to him, telling him what to do, ordering his steps, doing what he needed. The voice was different from his own voice. Please understand what I'm saying. Like, the voice is not your own voice. So it's not you self-talk, motivating yourself, empowering yourself, words of affirmation for yourself. It's not you. Totally different voice out here in these streets. Heard somebody told him to move to another place, didn't confide in anyone, didn't tell anybody what he was going through, didn't have a conversation with friends about his experience or anything like that, right? Pick up and I'm going to move from friggin' China to Canada. Why not? God said do it. Something in Canada is waiting for me. I'm going to live out my destiny. So while he was no longer hearing these voices and he was pretty much stable, right? After he joined his church and all of these good things, Vince had lots of things manifest for him. And he talked about some of these things very clearly and coherently with these police officers. They asked him about the event of him murdering Tim McLean. And he told them that God had commanded him to kill him because he was an alien. He was an alien. Yeah. So God had ordered him to kill him, and then God further ordered him to eat his heart, because that was the way that he was gonna protect the rest of the world from Tim. Yeah. Yep. That's that. Literally. And at the point, right? Because I told you guys the timeline. So during all of this time, he was being commanded to do things by God. Cut off certain parts of the body, display different things to the people who were onlooking. The part that really gets me is that at no point during the initial engagement did people attempt to help this guy. He had a knife, and, clearly poor Tim McLean was dead. He was dead by the time police arrived. Canadian authorities obviously operate a little bit differently. What can I say? But he was dead. And nobody went on the bus. Even the people that said that they were trying to help, right? It's a lot. It's a little interesting. You say, can mental disorder also be perceived as spiritual? So there are, when we are doing a confirmation of diagnosis in the DSM, which is our Bible of diagnosing in the field of psychology, right? We have to do what is called differential diagnosing. We have to look at cultural factors, and that includes the family of origin, how this person was raised. We have to look at the things that society or environment may have impressed upon the person. We have to look at a number of things when it comes to when the symptom first started to present, precipitating factors, like I mentioned, what your norm criteria behavior is, and in what domains of life is your behaviors and your receptions, your perception of life affected, right? Spirituality is definitely a huge component of culture. And I mentioned that he had joined a church, right? And his church is definitely a huge contribution to how his spiritual practices play into his behaviors, right? So, but so in our differential diagnosis, we have to look into all of that. However, his church members, nobody in his church was being directed by God to kill anybody and eat anybody. And his religion didn't indicate that. So those are contraindications of spiritual beliefs being at the root of what the issue is. Okay. And so, essentially speaking, it was not due to spiritual beliefs or cultural beliefs, which is why he was said to be not criminally responsible. He didn't know the guy before then. They had no type of interaction before then. He didn't go off on a tangent and started behaving this way against everyone, right? It was just directed towards this one person, right? And he was extremely meticulous about how he proceeded. Now, a couple of things stood out for me. I did some very thorough research about this before I presented it to you guys. The one thing that really stood out is the fact that he made some preparations prior to him leaving his home that would give him the opportunity to be able to be equipped with what he would need to kill this man. Although he says that God told him after getting on the bus that he needed to kill Tim McLean. You already armed yourself, so you went with the intent to do something criminal with a big knife. Yeah, so that stands out for me. Also, the people who testified in his case, there was not enough research at the time. I will talk to that fact. There was not enough research at the time to justify that a person who has experienced a psychological break, right? A brief psychotic episode is or is not gonna do it again if they don't have their meds, right? And during that time, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And it's definitely in alignment with schizophrenia, considering the fact that he was initially hearing these command types of hallucinations before he moved to Canada. Okay. And so hallucinations are a huge component of that diagnosis, but also your lived experience in life. His lived experience was very isolated when he got into Canada. He didn't socialize a whole lot. People said that he was a pretty likable guy when they talked about his personality, those that testified. So essentially, there was a lot there. Yeah, Trey, do me a favor and post the link to my YouTube in here. Because I should have posted that earlier, but I totally forgot. Let me see if I can find it. Because I really do need you guys to support my YouTube channel. Just see if I can find the link myself. That ain't it. Well, I found it, you guys. Oh, I can hit that button. And that's copy. So don't be laughing at me while I'm, doing my thing. By the way, I totally did my intro today, and I did it myself. I'm really excited. Well, no, I didn't. Bieber helped me a little bit, but let me be great. So there's the link to my YouTube. You know, hey, what's going on? The game ain't fair. Oh, that's Trey other thingy. Yeah. Let me see. I'm going to edit this on my page so you guys have this real quick. Yeah, but tell me, what are you guys thinking so far while I'm doing this update really quickly? What are y'all thinking? Like, what's there? What's on your mental? Okay, I think it is. I just dropped it on Facebook. Thank you very much. I was doing my thing there, you know. So you guys also have the link to join in if you want to talk about this briefly, because you know this show is going to be a little bit shorter than my typicals, but you know, there that is. So here's the thing. There is a lot here, you know, and I just feel like I feel like the people that testified to him not being a threat potentially in the future did an injustice to society. I want to go back to the very beginning of this video. I don't know who came in on the end of it, but he's out. He's been released. He's been released. And the biggest component for me as a person in this field is that he was released on the testimony of a psychiatric professional who says that he is not a threat to society and that he does not need to be released with conditions. Now, the conditions component is a really, really important part to a person pleading out insanity. An insanity plea, I don't have a problem with that. I know that was there. I'm very, very sure that was a fact. Based on all the information collected, everything that I've done my research on says that this guy is definitely suffering from schizophrenia. 155%. Okay, sure of that, you know. However, you cannot release a person whether they've had a violent criminal history or not, given the fact that schizophrenia causes dissociation in moments like this, right? When a person is psychotic in any instant, it causes dissociation. So this person dissociated completely, and that means that they are not quite sure as to what it is that happened with them in that moment. When this man got ready to escape from this bus, you guys, he was the real him. Vince was there, and he couldn't tolerate being in the same space with the person with all this blood everywhere, chopped up, all of this. And the real him had absolutely no idea as to what really transpired and the why. He didn't understand that because that's not a part of his seemingly pleasant personality. It's not a part of him. It's almost like you have DID. And DID is multi-personality disorder in our old DSM, which would have been relevant at that time. It's called DID, which is dissociative identity disorder now in our current DSM that's relevant to the here and now because it was updated in 2013, but that's neither here nor there. With the resources and the insights that they had about schizophrenia, psychosis, and things like that, he should not have been released into the community, and he's released now. He should not be out here in the community with everybody else without any limitations whatsoever, because schizophrenia actually is pretty manageable with sarcosine, which is, you can find that over the counter if you want to take it yourself. It's a vitamin. I mean, at some point, it was a prescribed medication that we used to prescribe for schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. However, it's now available because it was discontinued, you know? So about 1 milligram is effective in treating psychosis and understand and helping people to gauge those symptoms and preventing the symptoms from exacerbating to where they spiral into violent behavior or other behaviors that are really suspicious and things like that. Okay. So I had a question here I'm going to go to first before I do yours, urban therapist. You say, could the pressure in his marriage have triggered his schizophrenia? Sometimes it can remain dormant in his genes. No. So people are not born with schizophrenia per se. The research doesn't tell us that. However, all psychotic disorders, right? Your brain is a very interesting thing. Very, very interesting thing. It finds ways to protect you from the atrocities of life. I think that the pressure of married life combined with the fact that he had been fired, about 4 weeks or so prior to this, there are a lot of things that triggered this episode where his psychotic episode presented, but the schizophrenia in and of itself, no. And I'm pretty sure it's more in depth than many people are making it out to be. The thing is, people are still people. People think that, it's a schizophrenic. No, the personality of the person, the human being of the person is going to be manipulative if you lock them up on a 72-hour hold or you send them to a psychiatric unit for a hold, right? They're going to act the part so they can be released. That's the reality. That's the reality. Okay. So the important component is this: if you are a person who works in a psychiatric facility and you are releasing people to their own recognizances after they have murdered a person, I'm not even talking about the people that were exposed to the murder that now have to live with PTSD. But after they have murdered a person, right, you're releasing him to be in society and to move and go freely wherever he wants. He has no criminal convictions on his history now. Hello? You understand what I'm saying? Like, he could do it again. He doesn't have to take any medication, so you're not trying to gauge or manage the propensity of this happening again because you don't know what triggered him this time. That's the reality of this all, so I totally get this dude sending me this topic. It's terrible. And for the woman who lost her child as a result of the PTSD symptoms she experienced after seeing this very traumatic thing play out, wow. One of the things mentioned is that the people who were on the bus and got off the bus were watching these things happen, and they said that they could not take their eyes off of the event as it was unfolding. And one of the other things that goes to his email was that he was like, all of those people have an issue. Maybe there was a demon spirit on the bus, and why would they watch something like that happen anyway in the first place, especially a pregnant woman? Let me tell you something, sir. When you are exposed to a traumatic event, something that you never seen before, something that is like out of this world for you, you could have heard it 1,000,000 times over. Something that's never struck you as interesting whatsoever. Your in-person exposure is exposed to that. Your amygdala goes on freeze. It's like, what is happening before it does anything, right? And so most of the people felt like they were, safe outside the bus. And I just don't get the whole, we were trying to help and he was stabbing at us from inside of a locked bus door. Nah, not buying it. You said the Lucifer TV show is very interesting. It almost makes him a sympathetic figure. Well, I think that it plays out components of Lucifer, the devil, as you would have it, in ways that most people are unaware that he was already portrayed in the Bible. Believe it or not, he was an angel like everybody else, Godchild too. People make mistakes, so it is what it is. But yeah, they were in shock. They were in shock, and they were shocked. I'm shocked that people would judge them having seen such an atrocious event. Yeah, I'm watching your chat. I am. I am. But so the interesting thing for me here is they didn't get help for the people who were innocent bystanders on the bus, minding their own business, definitely not planning to witness a murder, especially a murder with cannibalism as a component, right? The other part is this: you lock this guy up in a psychiatric ward after an extremely speedy trial. I definitely have to commend them for having that very speedy trial. That right there is everything, literally. Boy, look, America needs to do that. We need to do that more often. Give people speedy trials so they can go ahead and figure out where their life is going or not. But yeah, so that's something that stands out for me. But also the component that is the biggest one here is that this man is now not only free, but he is free and he can take or not take medications to manage his condition. And he's already been started and had for several years psychiatric medications rendered. And the number one side effect of psychotropic medications that are used to treat psychotic conditions, they're called antipsychotics. The number one side effect is that it causes psychosis. Yeah, it can cause psychosis. And they testified that it was very unlikely that he would repeat those same behaviors or have a psychotic break again. We can never say that. We can't speak to that. I think they said like 0.8%. Where did you get these numbers? Where did you get these numbers from? Where did you get these numbers? Because like these numbers have never been a thing. Literally, they've never been a thing. Nope. The reality is, they say without managed medications or antipsychotics that you've been started on, the propensity that you would repeat that type of behavior or what they call regress into old patterns is about 27%. If you have not been taking medication, is somewhere around 51 to 58% if you're managed well on medications. So essentially, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. So to the family of Tim McLean, my heart definitely throbs. It goes out to you guys. I feel just absolutely terrible having to get this. It's just terrible. But for those people who are out there in the community, I really, please understand me, hear me, share this in the groups and everywhere that you have access to. People need to understand that this man is loose and out here in these streets. Don't ride the Greyhound bus. You know what? Don't even ride the transit bus. Like, I don't even know how can you repeat? I mean, how can you try to prevent something like this from happening to someone? Because you never know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen. You don't know where this guy is. Nobody's keeping track of him. Like, come on, people. Like, we keep track of registered sex offenders, but we don't keep track of people. What should we call them? Because they don't have a name just yet. And just know that if I come up with this name, it's going to be copyrighted. And what's wrong with you guys? But I'm thinking, let's go off the top of my head. I'm an off the cuff type of person. Registered psychotic episode defendants or offenders. That's a good way of doing it. If we send you to a psychiatric facility in lieu of sending you to jail for life for murdering a person, and you are in any way released, maybe we should register you as well. I don't know. So Franklin says, we have to realize that in the world, in fact, Western world, especially USA and Canada, people tend not to help when they see or witness such acts. Yeah, I to some extent I agree, but in this particular, this is so extreme and it was so random. I have to go with the fact that well, knowing how the human behavior is and knowing how the human mind is and that sort of thing, you're gonna be in shock. Like, period. It's extremely sad, Lisa. It really is. But you're going to be very much in shock, and you're not going to be able to respond, even if in normal circumstances that would be something that you are known for doing. The other piece is this, people, before I wrap this up and go. Lots of people every single day that we see in our lives have a high propensity or they are at high risk of experiencing a psychotic break. Psychotic breaks happen when we are so distressed in our current set of circumstances, in our current situations, right? That we can't find ourselves healing self or providing the adequate means of coping from within. As a result, we act out. We do things. Some people have tantrums. Some people murder people. Some people start hearing voices. They may not be commanding type initially, but they eventually move there. Whenever you hear something that is not of you, by you, it's not your voice. I don't know, even if you hear your own voice, get yourself assessed. Figure out what's going on, because your brain will do things that you are unaware of because it actually is in control of you and you're not in control of it. I tell people all of the time, find yourself some great ways to keep your brain healthy, right? And stimulated. Make sure you get your omega-3s, like all of that good stuff. Sarcosine is very good, like in general, you know what I mean? It just is. Also, ashwagandha is amazing. Turmeric is amazing. These things are naturally great for the body in general. So you should be taking those just because they're great supplements for the body in general. And there are no side effects like psychosis. So I think that you guys should be doing that because it's what you need to make sure that you remain healthy and calibrated. But more importantly, please, please, please be safe out there and know that Vince Lee is out there somewhere lurking, possibly in the shadows, possibly in a bush somewhere, possibly on a park bench somewhere waiting to get on the bus, and you could be next, because obviously we need more help in our field of qualified professionals putting reliable information out there that helps us to not only remain safe, but also help people in the best way that we can to keep them safe and keep them from harming other people. Like, seriously, there are no words. At any rate, you guys, I hope that those of you who came in on the end of this video, go and check out my intro. Are you subscribed yet? Hit the notification bell. Later days. Love you guys. And please be safe out there. Make good decisions. Don't hurt anybody. Please don't do anything crazy. Yeah. Oh, and also for you guys who tuned in, thank you so much for watching. Yeah, and fish oil is a great way for you to get your omega-3s, but you can also get, what do you call it? Seafood free, because people who have seafood allergies, they can't take the fish oil. But yeah, you can get it from the seafood free vitamins, just the omega-3 vitamin in and of itself. So yeah, that's all of that. You guys take care. Okay. I'm looking through y'all chat before I close out because I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Trey is actually watching Lucifer. This is interesting. The Allstate guy, yeah, that's who was playing it. Thank you, Kelso. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm caught up. I think I answered all the questions and everything else. So, deuces.